80% of NFL players slept on the same bed. It sold for $5,000. It looked like a mattress. Inside was a rubber air chamber, an electric pump, and sensors that watched you sleep. In 2021, a share of the company was worth $151. The day it filed for bankruptcy, 39 cents. That is not a figure of speech. It is not an estimate. It is the closing price. The stores were still open. The beds were still selling. That is the part that does not fit. A company does not usually die with the lights on. This one did. In the financial year 2021, it posted the best result it had ever had, $2.18 billion in sales. 5 years later, it was in a bankruptcy court, $672 million in debt, selling itself to the highest bidder. Nothing was stolen. No factory burned down. The product still worked, and people were still buying it. $672 million of debt sat against a business that had taken $319 million in its final quarter. So this is not a story about a product nobody wanted. It is a story about what that product cost to keep alive, and about two bills that were built so deeply into the bed itself that no chief executive could cut them fast enough. To see them, you have to open the bed. If you like stories about the machines that quietly rearrange American life, subscribe. It helps more than you would think. So, open the bed, cut through the quilted top of a $5,000 Sleep Number, and there are no springs. There is no coil unit. There's a chamber made of rubber, 24 gauge, vulcanized, with a cotton fabric heat bonded to the outside of it. That is the same family of material used in the inner construction of a car tire. Underneath it sits an electric pump. The pump moves air in or air out, and a number on a remote goes up or down, 0 to 100. That number is the whole product. Two chambers, side by side, meant one bed could be firm on the left and soft on the right. For 30 years, that was the entire sales pitch, and it was a good one because it solved an argument that happens in a great many bedrooms. The idea did not start here. A company called Comfortair built the first adjustable air-supported sleep systems. A man named Robert Walker left that world, and in 1987, he and his wife started their own company in Minnesota. For 4 years, annual sales stayed under $1 million. The first retail store opened near Minneapolis in 1992. Walker left in 1991, and what happened to him afterwards has nothing to do with beds. He founded an energy company in 2001, and in 2014 was sentenced to 25 years for defrauding roughly 1,800 investors. Different company. The bed business became a household name without him. For the first 2 decades, the machine stayed simple: rubber, air, a pump, a number. But the chamber that made the bed special also made it strange. Air chambers sit under foam, and foam holds moisture, and moisture sitting in a place it cannot evaporate from does what moisture always does. Complaints about mold inside the beds go back, according to later litigation, as far as 1996. In 2005, the company reformulated the beds with an antimicrobial treatment, which is not the action of a business that thinks nothing is wrong. A class action followed in California, alleging the design trapped moisture and that the company had misrepresented what it knew. The company disputed all of it and said any mold found in one of its beds was no more common than in any other piece of upholstered furniture. Both sides of that argument can be true at once. What matters here is the shape of it. The thing that made the product worth paying for was the same thing that made it complicated. That shape repeats. After 2018, the bed got sensors. Not in every model, in the smart ones. Those sensors sat under the sleeper and measured heart rate, breathing, and movement all night, every night. In the morning, a score, a number for how well a person had slept, sitting alongside the older number that described how firm the mattress was. To produce that score, the bed needed one more thing: Wi-Fi. Which means the bed talked. Every night, quietly, a bedroom appliance sent readings out of the house and into a data center somewhere else. The company said it did not sell or share that sleep health data, though it reserved the right to hand it over to law enforcement, insurers, or a court where the law required it. When Mozilla's privacy researchers reviewed connected products, readers voted the smart bed very creepy, and the reason is simple arithmetic. A machine that knows a person's heart rate and breathing and movement also knows when they went to bed, when they got up, and roughly what else happened in between. There is one more consequence, and it matters later. Take the Wi-Fi away, and parts of the bed stop working. Not the mattress. The mattress is still a mattress. But the responsive air adjustment, the routines, the foot warming, the score, those live on the other end of the connection. None of that is a mattress. All of it is a machine. And a machine arrives with a bill. For a long time, nobody cared because the machine was winning. March 2021. A single share of the company was worth $151.44. That was the highest it ever got. That same financial year, the company recorded $2.18 billion in sales and $6.16 of earnings per share. By every number it reported, the best year in its history. That money came from a ritual. A person could not buy this bed the way they bought a toaster. They had to lie down on it. The number, the thing actually being sold, did not exist until somebody put their body on the mattress and let the pump hunt for the pressure that suited them. A salesperson stood there with a remote. The display moved, 40, 55, 70. And once a customer had a number, they had something no catalog could hand them. A personal figure, theirs, that they now believed about their own body. That is a very hard thing to sell through a photograph. A picture cannot give somebody a number. So the ritual needed room. And the company built rooms. At its peak, at the end of the 2022 financial year, it operated around 670 stores across the United States. In 2022, the average store was turning over $3.28 million a year. It is worth pausing on what 670 stores actually means, because it is easy to hear that as a number rather than a machine. It means 670 leases, most of them in shopping centers and retail parks, where rent is not cheap. It means staff rosters in all 50 states. It means display beds, real ones, with real pumps and real chambers that had to be built, shipped, installed, run every day by strangers, and eventually replaced. It means delivery crews and service technicians within driving distance of every customer. None of that was waste. All of it existed for one reason: somebody had to lie down. The prices matched the ceremony. The i8 sold for around $3,999 in a queen size. The i10 sat just under $5,000. And at the top of the range, the Climate 360, which actively heated and cooled the sleeping surface, listed at $9,999, $10,000, for a bed. And people paid it, partly because of who else was sleeping on one. From 2018, the company was the official sleep and wellness partner of the National Football League. Around 80% of the league's players had a smart bed. More than 1,600 of them were using the sleep data. There were team deals with the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Rams. If a business wants to sell an expensive object to men over 45 in America, it is difficult to buy better proof than a locker room. It was also, unusually for a consumer product at that price, still made in the United States. Covers were cut and sewn in Irmo, South Carolina. Engineering and prototyping ran out of Salt Lake City, Utah. 5 assembly and distribution centers from Ontario, California, to Tampa, Florida, to Cincinnati, Ohio. Around 4,600 people worked there. That is worth holding on to because it rules something out early. This was not a company that had hollowed itself out and shipped its production somewhere cheaper. It was still cutting fabric in South Carolina and building prototypes in Utah while it was selling $2 billion a year. Whatever went wrong here did not go wrong in a foreign factory. It went wrong inside the design. A machine, a ritual, 670 rooms, and a queue of customers who believed in their number. Then, 2,000 miles away, in 2014, a different machine switched on. It was not a bed, it was a press. It took a foam mattress, compressed it under enormous force, and rolled it into a cardboard box small enough for one person to carry up a staircase. That is the whole revolution, not the foam, the box. Because once a mattress fits in a box, an ordinary courier can deliver it. No showroom, no delivery crew, no warehouse full of king-size inventory. A company called Casper launched that year on exactly that premise. One model, free delivery, 100 nights to try it at home. It went from a $1.6 million seed round to $200 million in sales. Meanwhile, 670 Sleep Number stores were signing leases and paying rent every month because the number still had to be found in a room. Casper sold one mattress. Sleep Number sold a range, built in American facilities, delivered and set up. One of those businesses could add a customer for the cost of a courier. The other added a customer for the cost of a room. Casper was not alone for long. Purple, Nectar, Lisa, and a dozen others followed the same press into the same box, and the price of a decent mattress in America started sliding downwards in public, on comparison sites, where anybody could watch it happen. And the customers moved. In 2016, 27% of mattress shoppers were looking online. By 2020, 47%. As one marketing professor put it, in a mature mattress market, almost all of the growth online comes out of the shrinkage of traditional retail. It is not new demand, it is the same demand walking out of the store. In October of 2018, Mattress Firm, the largest mattress retailer in the country, filed for bankruptcy and announced it would close up to 700 stores. That was the warning shot, and it was fired at the exact model Sleep Number depended on. Everyone else's costs fell. Sleep Numbers had been built into the product. Picture a Sleep Number store at the end. Lights off, signage still up, nobody inside, and the lease still running. Because when the company finally reached a bankruptcy court, it had to ask a judge for permission to walk away from 44 locations it had already closed. That is the first bill. Call it the room. The room was never a marketing choice. It was structural. The number could only be sold by lying down, so the rooms had to exist. 670 of them. And as shoppers moved to their phones, each of those rooms earned less. Average revenue per store fell from $3.28 million in 2022 to $2.85 million in 2023. That is a drop of about 13% in a single year, and it kept going. The company started closing stores, 40 to 50 in 2024, around 40 more in 2025, finishing that year near 600. But a closed store is not a saved cost, not straight away. The lease outlives the lights. That is why 44 dead locations were still on the books when the case was filed. The second bill was smaller, newer, and much harder to see. Call it the chip. Sensors, wireless modules, batteries, control boards. The parts that made the bed smart are electronics, not textiles, and electronics are treated very differently at a border than cotton and foam. When tariffs shifted, The company told investors it was looking at roughly $30 million of unmitigated exposure for 2025. It negotiated with suppliers, rerouted what it could, and clawed back about $17 million of that. $13 million was left standing. In its own bankruptcy filing, the company said unpredictable tariff policy had disrupted the global supply chain for its smart beds and raised its operating costs significantly. A foam slab in a box has no chips in it. There is nothing there for a tariff to grip. So the two bills sat inside the product. The room, because the number had to be found in person. The chip, because the bed had been taught to think. Neither one could be deleted in a quarter. Both could only be trimmed, slowly, while the rest of the industry was getting cheaper fast. A new chief executive, Linda Findley, arrived in April of 2025 from Blue Apron. She cut hard. More than $185 million of annualized cost, with another $50 million identified. Everything that could be cut quickly was cut. Which raises the fair question. The whole industry was shrinking. Domestic mattress shipments across America fell from about 26.3 million units in 2021 to 19.2 million by 2024. In 2025, the bedding market fell another 6.5% by value and more than 13% by unit. Everybody was bleeding. So why did this company die when the others did not? Because there was no cushion. $672 million of debt, taken on in the good years, sitting against a margin that thinned every quarter. Other companies had time to shrink. This one had interest payments. After that, the numbers arrive in order, and they arrive quickly. Full year 2025, sales down 16% to $1.4 billion. Net loss of $132 million against a $20 million loss the year before. Then, on the 12th of March 2026, the company filed results containing the two words that end companies. Substantial doubt about its ability to continue as a going concern. The share was trading around $3.31. The entire business was worth about $64 million on the open market. 6 weeks before that filing, the company had signed a new partner. Then, on the 12th of June 2026, it filed for Chapter 11. The share closed at 39 cents. 5 years earlier, it had been $151.44. And this is what the bed had actually been selling. Not firmness, not sleep, a subscription to a company staying alive. The rooms, the display beds, the delivery crews, the chips, the servers, the app, the score in the morning. Every one of those was a recurring cost, and every one of them was inside product, where it could not be cut in a hurry. The features that justified $5,000 were the same features that made $5,000 impossible to hold when the floor fell out of the industry. On the 28th of January, 2026, Sleep Number signed Travis Kelce. Not as a spokesman, as a strategic partner and an investor. 135 days later, the company was in bankruptcy court. What happened in that court is worth sitting with, because it was not a fire sale. The company arrived with a buyer already lined up, what the courts call a stalking horse bid, worth $415 million. That was the floor, not the price. On the 13th of July, the assets went to auction, and the auction ran through multiple rounds. The winning bid came in at $701,800,000. $529.5 million of that in cash. The rest, in liabilities, the buyer agreed to carry. $286.8 million above the floor. People fought over this company. Even at the end, with the debt, the losses, the closing stores, the brand, the patents, the manufacturing and the customer base were worth almost $750 million to somebody. That somebody was Canadian. On the 20th of July, a judge approved the sale. On the 31st of July 2026, Sleep Country, Canada's largest mattress retailer, founded in Vancouver in 1994, completed the purchase. The combined business runs more than 800 stores across 2 countries and became the second largest sleep retailer in the world, which is a strange sentence to say out loud. For most of the last decade, the story told about American manufacturing has been a story about Asia. Factories moving, parts arriving in containers, competition arriving with them. This was not that. Nobody undercut Sleep Number from overseas. An American company built an American product in American plants, sold it through American stores, and was bought at the end by a retailer from the country next door, for cash, in an open auction in front of a judge. And there is a detail inside that purchase worth noticing. Among the brands Sleep Country already owned was Casper Canada. The company that ended up owning America's biggest bed maker also owned the brand whose cardboard box had helped rearrange the industry underneath it. There is a smaller number in the court file that says something too. While all of this was happening, the company asked the court to approve retention payments for 38 employees, vice presidents, directors, and support staff, totaling $1.825 million. Payments ranged from $10,000 to $125,000. The United States trustee objected, arguing some of them were effectively insiders. On the 28th of July, the court approved the payments anyway. In total, they came to about 0.25% of the winning bid. The cost of keeping the people who knew how the machine worked in the building long enough to hand it over. Now, the careful part, because this is where these stories usually get told wrong. Sleep Number did not vanish. The brand is alive. The stores opened the next morning. The beds are still made, still sold, still delivered. What died was narrower and more specific than a brand. What died was Sleep Number as an independent American company, and the money of every person who owned a piece of it. $151.44, down to 39 cents. That is a 99.7% erasure, and it did not move to a competitor. It simply stopped existing. The workforce tells the same story more quietly. Around 4,600 people when the business was at full stretch, about 2,920 by the time the sale went through. There is one more group in this story, and it is by far the largest. Through the bankruptcy, the company said the stores would stay open, the website would keep taking orders, and the app would keep working. Warranties, sleep trials, and gift cards would be honored. But a Chapter 11 has an uncomfortable rule sitting underneath it. A company in bankruptcy can ask a court to reject its contracts. Long warranties and long-term software support are unsecured claims, and unsecured claims are last in the queue. That is not a prediction about what the new owner will do. It is a description of where those particular promises sit in a bankruptcy, which is at the back. Which brings this back to the machine. Tonight, in bedrooms all over the country, those beds are still running. The pumps are still adjusting. The sensors are still counting heartbeats, and they are still talking to a server. That server belongs to a company in another country now. Nobody asked the people sleeping on them how long they would like it left on.